everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I would love to talk about the books that are on my TBR, which means all the books I own, physical books that I still haven't read, and there are quite a lot of them. I've been thinking about doing this for myself for some time now, doing this video in order to share it with you, but also in order for me to know the current number of books I own that I haven't read yet. But the thing that pushed me to actually do it today is that last night I watched Ivymuse do this tag video, and I immediately knew I wanted to do this as well right now. So I will put the link to her video down below, and even though I haven't been tagged to do or answer these questions, I am still going to answer them because I find them interesting, and I find that this sort of video helps me kind of manage my TBR and my book buying habits a little bit, just a tiny little bit. Anyway, before I get started on the actual questions, I think you want to know how many unread books I own at the moment. I just counted all of my physical unread books. I'm not even going to think about all of my ebooks, but there are a total of 64 unread books on my shelves. And that's even a lie, because about 12 of them are new books that are coming to me, but I have already bought them. They are arriving within the next few weeks, and of course I'm going to give you a book haul once they are here. But those books included makes it a total of 64 unread books, which is a lot. I mean, it's not too much. I feel comfortable with that number, just a tiny little bit uncomfortable, but all in all, I'm okay with it. So let's just get started on the actual questions. So the first question is a book on your TBR pile that you haven't finished. And for that question, I only have one book that I started a few months back and haven't been able to finish yet. That is The 12th by Justin Cronin, which is the second book in the Passage trilogy. And I quite enjoyed The Passage. I immediately, while reading that book, bought the second and third book in that series. I started the second one and I've just stalled in my reading. I don't feel like I'm enjoying myself reading this series very much, unfortunately. And I know what is wrong. What is wrong is that the dystopian parts don't speak that much to me, and most of these books do take part in the dystopian world, so that the parts that I enjoy reading are about our world today and how things developed to this dystopian world. I love those passages and I love following the characters in our normal world of today, but once we get to those dystopian parts, I find myself so disconnected from the characters. I have a hard time imagining the setting and the situation, and I just can't make myself pick up this book and finish it. So that's why it's still unread, but I do have hopes to finish it eventually, maybe in autumn when the mood outside is better for this kind of book. The second question is a book you just haven't had time to read, which I think goes for all of my unread books, but I have found one book that I really want to read very soon, but so far I haven't had time for it, and that is Educated by Tara Westover. This is a non-fiction book about a woman who grew up in a very alternative way, so that her family believed in no schools, no socializing with boys. You had to stay at home, you had to be home educated. And this woman just has suffered quite a lot in her childhood and in her upbringing. I find this topic very fascinating. I think it will be intriguing to read about from her point of view. So this is one I've had my eyes on for quite a long time now. I just haven't had the time to pick it up yet, but it will happen sooner rather than later. Number 3 is a book you haven't read because it's a sequel. I don't own a lot of series on my TBR, which is on purpose, because while I do read series, it's not my preferred reading mode. I prefer standalones way over series, but I have one series that I haven't finished yet, and that is this one. Once again, it's the trilogy by Justin Cronin. This is the third book. Who knows if I will ever get to it, being that I'm not really enjoying myself reading the second one. But if it's meant to happen, it will happen, and I do quite enjoy the way this series looks on my shelves, so I'm not quite ready to get rid of it yet and to give up on it, but this is, I believe, the only sequel that I currently have on my TBR. I apologize in advance for the lighting. The sun is shining, sometimes it's not. Anyway, I can't really help it. I hope you can deal with it and still not be too distracted from hearing my wise words or whatever. Question number 4 is a book you haven't read because it's brand new. Now, I mentioned earlier that I have a bunch of new books coming for me in the mail, and one of those books has arrived, so I'm going to show that one to you. This will be a sneak peek on my upcoming book haul. I have here The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. You might remember that last month I read and loved her Circe, so I was very eager to get my hands on this beautiful book and read the story as well, which I have heard is even better than Circe. I will find out if that is true according to my opinion. However, I was very desperate to get this beautiful hardback edition, and that wasn't that easy. I actually had to go on Twitter and ask people to help me, and one person did direct me to this page that had this hardback book for me. So what I'm trying to say is that I have bought this book used, but it's in pretty good condition, and I'm just so happy that I was able to find the hardback version, and I'm going to dive straight into this book after my current read. If everything goes according to plan, which it rarely does, let's be honest. Now, the next question is quite interesting because it's a book by an author you read previously but didn't really like. Now, this is going to be very controversial. I have here Satri by Cormac McCarthy, which I bought some months ago, and I also bought this book, which I have read now. But you will see and hear more of my thoughts on it in my upcoming June reading vlog. And in that vlog you will see that I did not care for this book at all. So it's very unfortunate that I now own another book of his that I haven't read, which is also pretty huge. But I will give him another try. I will get more in depth about my feelings towards this book in my reading vlog. But for now I can just tell you that I'm not too eager to jump into this one because I really strongly disliked this book. Number 6 asks me about a book on your TBR pile that you're just not in the mood to read. You know I'm a moody reader, so I understand this question perfectly, and there are lots of books on my TBR that I'm not really in the mood to read right now, but I know I will be later this year. So I've just chosen one of those, and I went for We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. I'm pretty sure, at least, that I'm going to love this book because I love this author, but I also know that her stories are better to read in the cold and autumnal months, I believe. So it's not a book that I'm in the mood to read right now, but I know that once I do, I'm pretty sure I'm going to fall in love with it. And it's just nice for me to know that I have this amazing novel to look forward to once darkness sets in. Question number 7 is a book on your TBR pile that you haven't read because it's enormous. I have some different choices for this one because I do have a few books on my TBR that are huge. First of all, we have A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry, which is also a book that I'm not really in the mood for right now. I have a feeling that this is going to be a heavy historical fiction novel, which is fine with me, but not during summer. I tend to save these for later in the year. This novel might not look that huge to you, but it is over 500 pages. The font is very small, and there are just a lot of pages, so I'm a little bit intimidated by this one. Some other huge books on my TBR are a book of American Martyrs as well as The Accursed, both by Joyce Carol Oates. I mean, look at the size of these books. I also have several answers for the next question, which is a book on your TBR that you bought because of the cover. Now, I will say that I don't think I buy books based purely on the cover. The cover is the first thing to draw me in, and if I really like it, I am more likely than not to go look up the synopsis. But it's not until I have read the synopsis and agreed with it and wanted to read the book that I actually go purchase it. So these are cover buys. I have several options, but they are books that I know that I want to read anyway. The pretty cover is just a nice perk. First of all, I have here The Immortals by Chloe Benjamin. I mean, this cover is absolutely gorgeous. Then I have here The Toy Makers by Robert Dinsdale. Another book that is so gorgeous, I could stare at it for hours. Not hours maybe, but for a pretty long time. And then my last option is The Wicked Cometh by Laura Carlin. This is a naked hardback, and it's just such a gorgeous book that I had to own it, and I also really want to read the story, naturally. And that leads me to the very last question, which is the book on your TBR that you find the most intimidating. And once again, I have selected several options, but my options do have the thing in common that they are all classics. I find huge classics pretty intimidating in general. So I have here Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. I still haven't read this book. I don't know if it will ever happen while I'm in my young years, without mentioning an age. I also have this beautiful The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. By the way, this is the Penguin Clothbound Classic editions, in case you're wondering. I also went for Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak, which comes in this beautiful vintage Russian edition. Now, this book is one that I have read the first 100 pages of some years ago. I wasn't that intrigued, but I am determined to give this book another chance in the future. But that doesn't mean that I'm not still intimidated by it. I am. So that is it for this tag video. I hope you enjoyed hearing my answers to these questions and hearing more about my unread books that I have to look forward to. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, happy reading!